Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So wake up, stand up, get up. It is time for the Trust webinar. You cannot behave trust. 4 key elements of trust and behaviors that built it, brought to you by Chapman & Co. Leadership Institute. Hey, first thing I'm going to do is orient you to the webinar. I know a lot of you are familiar with this, but just really quick at the bottom of your screen, I think you're going to see 3 functions. The raise hand function, the Q&A function, and one other one. Oh, the chat function. All right, so raise your hand anytime there's issues, technology or otherwise, where I'm asking you to. This is going to be highly interactive. The chat function, put whatever you'd like in there, commentary, you like it, hey, I want to know about this. Just put that in there. Please do me a favor, and when you do write in the chat function, if it's some kind of commentary, put it to where all the panelists can see that, not just to me, but to everyone, and I'll respond to everyone as well. And lastly, the Q&A function. You want to put your question in there at any time during this webinar. We'll make sure that we have an opportunity to answer that question as we go along. Quickly for reference, my name is Matt Wyatt. I have a background in the US military, but I've been doing consulting with organizations large and small for about the last 6 years, and I'm a co-founder of the Chapman & Company Leadership Institute. We're actually an organization that lives underneath a parent company called Barry-Wehmiller. Some of you might be familiar with this organization, but just quickly, Barry-Wehmiller is a capital goods manufacturing. We're about 106 acquisitions around the world, 200 locations, everywhere from China to India, South Africa, a lot of operations in Europe, and of course, here in North America. About 106, as I mentioned, acquisitions that live all over the world, and we have about $3 billion in annual revenues. We make all the stuff that you might see in a grocery store. So whatever you might pick out of a supermarket, we've packaged it, we've bottled it, we've labeled it. And the reason I bring this up is to say it's not just a consultancy. We actually use the content I'm going to present to you. We use that inside our organization as well as the external people we work with, and that's where the Leadership Institute comes in. I put the bottom right there in front of your screen, our growth. The revenue piece is important for us, as I don't want you to think that this is just simply about how do we have a nice way to treat people, and it's a picture of a meadow and fluffy kittens and all the soft type of skills. This is also for how we run the game of business. And we don't shy away from profit. That's actually representative of a future for our people. It's growth. It's a way I measure business impact. So in the content I'm going to give you here, I want you to understand that this also has a performance aspect to it. So as we begin, and before we start on the trust part, I know that most webinars, there's like about a 15-minute sales pitch, right? On, I don't know, a set of knives, it's a timeshare, it's something about how you can work with us and how important we are, and here's how you should do it. And then there's all this gates of how you can do work with us, and that's not going to happen here. This is one slide. I'm just going to tell you, we work with organizations around the world, and we do these things. We do assessments, we do leadership development, training courses, workshops, and keynotes, and consulting. That's the end of my pitch. If you like the content, you can contact me afterwards. I'll have my email, but that's it. Let's talk about some important things here. Before we begin with the slides, I am going to run some polls, and what I'd like you to do is answer these questions. I have just some basic questions on trust in the workplace. The first question I'm going to answer as I launch this, just go ahead and put whatever your answer is in there. My first question I'm going to ask is, what % of managers say they are transparent with their teams? What % of managers say they are transparent with their teams? Just go ahead and put in what guess. This is what % say they are transparent. Now, what % are, but what % say they are? And most of you put in, and I'm gonna end the polling, and I'll show you what this is here. And as I share the results, you see the vast majority you put in 80%, 80%. You are correct. 80% say they are transparent with their teams. Now, the interesting part here, though, is I run another poll question. As I run the next poll question is, let me run the next one here. I'm going to pause on this really quick, and I apologize. We're going to run the next question would be, what % of employees agreed with their manager's assessment of transparency? And as I bring that poll question up, we're having a little bit of difficulty with bringing the next one up. So I'm just going to have my, my tech over here help me out with this. But I'm just going to read this off. What % of employees agreed with their manager's assessment of transparency? Either 23%, 80%, 75%, or 55%. Go ahead and answer that one for me, please. And as these votes come in, the actual answer is D, 55%. So while 85% of managers say they're being transparent, only 55% of the employees are actually feeling it that way. Right, so let me show the results to you on this one. I'm going to go to the next poll question here. What percent of employees feel like their leaders care about their well-being? This is question number 3. What percent of employees feel like their leaders care about their well-being? And as the votes come in here, the majority of you are around A, around 53%, and you're absolutely correct. And we'll share those results with the group. 53% of employees feel like their leaders literally care about them. While you might say, well, that's pretty good, that also means half of people surveyed, they say, I don't think my leader actually cares about me. And you might be saying, well, I thought this was going to be on trust, and we'll relate this all back in a moment here. All right, and next question. What percent of people do not trust their employer? And my friend here, Maria, is going to launch that poll question for you. What percent of people do not trust their employer? What percent said, I don't trust my employer? A good mix of votes coming in on this one. The actual answer, as we share this, the actual answer was about a third. So about 1/3 of people do not trust their employer. And you might think, well, that's not so bad. I mean, Matt, you put 62% as one of the questions, and that wasn't it. Well, true, but that means when you think about your organization, think about a team of 3, 1 in 3 doesn't trust it. All right, so let's talk about trust. What is the most trusted group, what is the most trusted source of information in any given organization? In any given organization, the question's coming up, what is the most trusted source of information in any given organization? Any one of them. This could be government, this could be for-profit, non-profit. What's the most trusted source? Fantastic, so the vast majority of you, and we're gonna launch this one and show you, the vast majority of you said peer group. I come from a background in the military, and they did a huge study to try and figure out, well, what's the best way to get information out to the field, to everyone? And by and far, the 2 places that were most trusted were the peer group, and it was a third-party press run by an ex-military person that would just say anything. The CEO, the official PR release, the immediate leader were the least trusted areas to receive information. And so we're going to work today on some ways that we can reverse that. All right, next question. Of the following list, what is the #1 items employees want to know about their leader? In the following list, what's the #1 item employees want to know about their leader? Is it values? Is it obstacles that the CEO or the leader has overcome? Is it they want to know about what status they have with their current major airline? And that's important stuff, people. They want to know their personal success story. What's the #1 thing employees want to know about their leader? And I'm going to launch this and show you what the results are, and you are absolutely correct. This is an advanced class, I would say. You guys are really doing well. This is correct. Values. I want to know what drives you. I want to know underneath. I don't need to know your success story. I don't need to know what trials and tribulations you've overcome or what you attribute to how great you have accomplished. I want to know at the very core of who you are, what drives you. And not even, as you notice, I'm not even trying to align the values. I just want to know what drives you. All right. Next question. As you move deeper down or into an organization's hierarchy, trust increases or decreases? What's the guess? You got a 50-50 shot at this one, folks. What's the guess? As I move deeper down into an organization's hierarchy, trust increases or decreases? And as we launch these results, you are correct that unfortunately for organizations writ large, on average, trust actually decreases. Next question. Before people would trust their leader, they would trust A, their government, B, a rodeo clown, C, a stranger, D, the cosmos. No answer is wrong here. You can choose whatever you'd like. Before people would trust their leader, they would trust. I like that a few of you are saying they would trust the cosmos. I really like, whoever that voted for the cosmos, I really like you. And for the one person that voted rodeo clown, I want to party with you. The truth is, yes, listen to this is crazy. Before people would trust their leader, and the percentage of this, by the way, is around 50%. 50% would say that I would trust a stranger before I trusted my leader. One of the reasons is the stranger hasn't lied to them. The stranger hasn't tried to take information and put a spin on it. The stranger's got his clean slate. my own leader, that's a problem. And it's sad, right, that no one says their government. All right, moving on. 89% of leaders think that employees leave for more pay. The actual percentage of employees that leave for more money is what? Remember, 89%, almost 9 out of 10 leaders think their people leave for more pay. The actual number of people who leave for more pay, we're going to share this view with you now, is actually just 12%. That's astounding, even in the difference of what we think. The number one, next question, the number one item employees ask for of their employer is A, more pay, B, recognition, C, better benefits, D, a better fitting uniform that didn't look like they were trying out for a Duran Duran cover band. What do we have, folks? Do I want more pay, more recognition, better benefits, or stop looking like I'm in the 80s? 100% of you, I'm going to launch this one, 100% of you said recognition, and you are absolutely correct. Okay, we're going to get into the last couple questions here. True or false? The determining factor, the chief determining factor in building trust is time. True or false? First gut reaction. The chief determining factor in building trust is time. Okay, and as we launch these, this is a good one. We'll get back to this one. I'm going to end on this concept. So I'm not going to tell you what the answer is right now, but you're almost split here between true and false. And we're going to end up with that. Okay, last question. What percent of leaders say they received no leadership training from their employer? They're now a leader, they're in a leadership role. What percent say they received no training from their employer? This is like the optimistic group. The vast majority as I launch this says about 90%. The actual percentage is right around 60%. So 6 out of 10 leaders say I received no training from my employer. Hence why we're doing a little bit of this work. And this work is going to be on, okay, let's talk about how we actually build trust in an organization. All right, as I close out those polling questions, and I appreciate all the polls that are coming out here. And I have one message from panelists who's saying I'm not seeing the polls, and we're working on that aspect right now. So Kristen, for you, we're working to fix that part of it. As I jump into the slideshow here for all of us, I'm going to start with, I'm a kid from the 80s, so I'm going to start with Voltron. Voltron is a really fantastic magical creature that was created by 5 robot lions. The reason I bring this up is your organization is a collection of independently operating, slightly independently operating entities, departments, teams, locations that together, maybe you don't create one form, one defender of the universe who looks so cool, but you do create one organization trying to accomplish one goal, one mission, one business outcomes. And this would be Voltron. It's 5 robot lions with the crazy mathematical formula equals 1 defender of the universe. That is what we're trying to work on in your organization to say, if all culture is local and it's the sum total of all of these behaviors, how do we build trust in each one of the teams to where it operates as a single entity? If you're in a leadership position, this changes a little bit because you have a tremendous amount of influence in whether the trust is built, eroded, not built. As a leader, you just influence that department, that team even greater. And the reason we put a mountain in the background here is because of a mountain's influence in the weather system. Is a great metaphor and conceptual analogy to you as a leader. You impact the weather system more than anything else. And we're going to get into how you can do that. The first thing I'm going to start with is a basic definition. And so there's all kinds of stuff has been written about trust. There are trust models. There's the speed of trust. There's all these consultancies that have their special way. In the beginning, let's just start with a definition. Trust is a belief in someone or something. That's it. All right. So when I ask people to say, okay, if that's what trust is, I'm going to actually ask you to draw a picture of trust. And here's what happens when we consult with organizations around the world. Here's what we see when people ask them to draw a picture of trust. You'll see things like a safe. It's safekeeping. There's a protection item to it. You will see things, and I don't know why this comes up because no one ever shows a cat, but oftentimes they'll draw a picture of a person walking a dog. I guess the dog is trustworthy. Cats, they're kind of shifty. They've got those eyes. I don't know. I'm not a cat or a dog person. I'm just telling you, when people say draw a picture of trust, they draw a picture of a dog, and especially of someone walking. Oftentimes, they will show pictures of hands, whether hands are holding, hands together, hands shaking. they'll draw a picture, and basically what it is, it's not the hands, it's connection people are drawing to. And we're going to come back to that. Sometimes for whatever reason, they draw pictures of trees. Not just trees like saplings, but like mighty oak trees. I think because of the sturdiness, the life, the generation, they'll draw a lot of pictures of trees. And then, yes, some people will draw a picture of a trust fall. This is my interpretation of a trust fall. It's a kid jumping into her mom's arms or something. But basically, it's when you have to take a leap of faith, when you're vulnerable, I'm going to be there to catch you. That's what people draw pictures of. And inevitably, they'll draw a picture of a fortress or a castle. This is for you, Rob, in the UK. They'll draw something that talks about the protection and the might and the longevity of it. And then inevitably, we'll get into someone drawing a picture of some kind of structure. It usually has columns to it. I think because they think about how much a relationship or performance rides literally on this concept. And they're trying to bring it true to say, hey, yes, trust are the foundations upon which everything else is built. And so they give us a picture of a building. All right, here's what I'd like you to do. I want you to think of a time when someone, anyone, could be family, friends, coworkers, athletics, whatever it might be. I want you to think of a time when someone has built trust with you. I'd like you to use the chat room, and I want you to just list the specific behavior they exhibited, just so all of us can see this, the specific behavior. So as an example, a specific behavior, and I'll type this one in here. Yeah, Rob, thank you. They listened. Another one would be, and I'll type this over in the chat room. Another one would be that they told the truth. Lisa, thank you. They spoke with humility and transparency. John, they had my back. They were an advocate. They were transparent. I would write in, they told the truth. And we're not going to judge anyone's spelling when we're typing this fast. They told the truth. I would offer, okay, Jennifer says they asked how they could help. They told me they cared about my success. As we think about these, so what other ones we would put in this? I would say for someone that I don't know, if I'm walking onto, I've got to pause here. Catherine, thank you. When my cat let me pet her belly, that is a huge act of trust, because cats, and I know you're a cat person and you're upset with me about the dog picture, but I'm with you. When that cat lets you pet her belly and she doesn't attack, or he doesn't attack you, good, that's a sign of trust. I'm not sure that I'm advocating for that to happen in the workplace, but I get what you're saying. If I'm working and I'm walking onto a jet airplane, I'm looking at, from a trust aspect, I'm looking at how the person looks, how they behave. Like, are you competent to do your job? But I'm certainly looking at that, and how someone builds trust is they have a sense of confidence in the way they talk, the way they move. They don't look unsure of themselves. If we were working, too, and Kristen, I see that you're looking at trying to get the slides in here, so I think we're working on getting that fixed for you as well. Also, the other part is more privileges. Sure, they gave me a little bit more insight into this. If I were taking all of these behaviors, I'm going to move back into my slides here and give you a model. If I was thinking about all these behaviors, they could lead to the belief that I literally cannot behave trust. So what you guys said, as I asked, how has someone built trust with you? You didn't say they just told me to behave it. You might say, well, they extended trust first to me, but I actually can't behave trust. What I can do is I can behave in ways that lead to the belief of trust. So there are behaviors, as you just listed, being reliable, telling me they cared about my success, listening to me, having my back. I can behave in ways that lead to the belief of trust. Here's a model. It's a model, and it's nothing, there's no intellectual property on this. If we were to take all the behaviors that you mentioned, all the behaviors that anyone mentions about how someone built trust, and if I were to put the behaviors into 4 categories, these are the 4 categories: compassion, character, consistency, and competence. Compassion and character are the 2 that are really tough for me to see, but you'll mention them. They had my back. They were advocates for me. They told me they cared about me and my success. Compassion, I care about you. Character, I'm going to do the right thing. Consistency, I can do the job over and over and over a repeated amount of time, is there, of course. And then competence, can I actually do the job? All 4 of those are necessary for trust. The top 2, competence and consistency, those are the 2 areas that I can actually see. They're tangible. The other 2 are hidden, they're deeper. Let me give you an example of interacting with this. Let me give you an example of this. So let's say all of us, we're all out in the world, we're visiting Rob. He's in the UK, we're visiting him, we're out at a pub, it's a great time. We're having a few drinks, we decide we shouldn't drive home, so we call an Uber. We jump into an Uber, or it could be a Lyft or some kind of shared ride. We grab into the shared ride, and the driver gets in and drives about 50 meters down the road and hits a telephone pole or hits a post. We're all fine, we get out of the car, whatever. A few weeks later, we're at the pub again, because hey, it was a good time, no one got hurt. We're at the pub again, we're having a great time, have a few drinks, and we decide we're gonna call a shared ride. The same car, same driver shows up. Do we get in the vehicle? And the answer is, of course, no, of course we don't get in the vehicle. You've already showed to me that you don't have the competence, and the consistency is pretty much 0 for 2 on this one, or 0 for 1. Let's reverse this. Let's rewind the tape. Now we're out at the pub, but this time when we call for a ride, we call a family member. We call, let's say it's mom. Mom shows up, we get in the car, mom starts driving 50 meters down the road. Turns out mom's not a good driver either. Mom crashes into a post. Okay, we all get out, we're perfectly fine. 2 weeks later, we're repeating the session, we had a great time. Mom pulls up. Do we get in the car? And the answer for most audiences, the vast majority of them is, actually we get in the car. Why is that? For one, we know that mom cares about us as a person. We know mom is a good person, so obviously I'm at the compassion and character part here. We also know that mom probably has more consistency with us and more competence. The reason I bring up that very silly little anecdotal story is to say, as a human, competence and consistency, as a human, it should be one of the definitions of being human, you will not be 100% accurate and perfect in your competence and your consistency. It's why when we have really, really dangerous jobs where lives are on the line, we don't allow one person to be the checks and the balances and to do all of the work. We all want a second set of eyes on it. The reason I bring that up is your trust needs to fall on something when you fail in your performance or your consistency. And that's where character and compassion come in. Okay, I'm going to show you, and I'm going to let you interact with this, and then ask you to vote on this, and then we're going to interact with the other model. I can't literally show trust, but I can show these behaviors. So under the compassion block, as an example, one of you mentioned this about what's the behavior the leader showed that built trust with you. One is they listen. The other one is you can have some empathy. I can walk a mile in their shoes. I can look after people's well-being. I'm concerned about your career, how you're doing, how your personal life is. I'm an advocate for you. I want to see that you succeed. And the last part there is I want to recognize and celebrate people. Remember, one of the questions I asked you was, out of all the things that you want from an employer, 89% of leaders thought their employees left for more pay. The actual percentage of that was only 12%. And really what people wanted, the number one thing people are asking for from their employer, more recognition. I need you to know I'm working hard, I'm doing a good job. That's where compassion comes in. I have to bring this up because I'm a Saturday Night Live fan. The walk a mile in their shoes is basically empathy. I always used to like the character, his name was, I think his name is Dave Handy, and he used to do these vignettes. Is it Dave Handy? Jack Handy, I'm sorry. My people are looking at me like, Matt, don't blow this. Come on, it's Jack Handy. All right, I'm trying. Jack Handy. And he would say things, crazy things about just silly things. And he would say this, he'd say, you know, I think before you criticize someone, you should walk a mile in their shoes. That way, when you do criticize them, you're a mile and away and you have their shoes. So I always like that one. It's only funny to me. I don't care. Okay, moving on to character. Character, this is, am I going to do the right thing? I want to be honest, keep my word, behave in values that are aligned, or behave in ways that are aligned to your personal values. Remember that question I asked, what do people want to know about their leader? They want to know what drives them, what their values are. Okay, so behave in ways that are aligned to those. Give credit where it's due, and speaking truth to power. This might be a saying only on this side of the pond, but speaking truth to power is, regardless of where you are in a hierarchy, you will tell the truth. That's under character. Under consistency, it's not just stable performance over time. It's be somebody someone can count on, show up in a way that's predictable, make equitable decisions, not always the same, but equitable, and make decisions that are aligned, and voice this, that are aligned with your organizational values. And the last one is competence. Obviously know my job. Yes, do it efficiently. Yes, pursue mastery. The bottom two here I want you to key in on. One is I'm going to display initiative, like I'm going to look for growth. And the other one is, and this is the highest form of the knowledge, is I know the job so well, I can coach another. If I were bringing this to a military standpoint, it would be the only people that rise to the level of instructors in some kind of, whether it's a weapon system or a job or whatever it might be, those people that rise to level instructors are the people that know the job best. They know it inside and out. Those areas, those 4 areas. Okay, I know I've been talking for a little bit, so I want to hear from you all. I'm going to relaunch the poll, and I'm going to ask this question of you. Looking at this model, I want you to tell me what element of the trust model, compassion, character, consistency, or competence, tell me which area do you feel is the strongest in your overall, just in general, in your workplace, your department, your team. If you were just to rate what you're good at, what would that be? Give me some feedback on this and tell me where you would rate this. As you're putting your votes in, as an example, in the Leadership Institute, I would say one of the areas we're probably strongest in, maybe even to a fault, but we're strongest in the area probably of compassion. I think there's a lot of care from a personal standpoint. We're a fast-moving team. We change a lot, and so sometimes our consistency and competence, I would say, is not as high. So as the votes come in, we're going to launch this, and I'll show you what you all said. This is an interesting split. So the good majority of you, well, not the good majority, 35% said competence is where you're strongest in. Consistency a little lower, and character and compassion were split. Important for us to think about that, because when I give you these behaviors in these 4 areas, these 4 buckets, if you will, whatever I'm lowest in, let's talk about that. If we're very competent, but we don't feel our compassion's there, good, here are the behaviors that allow us to increase in that area. Okay, back into the slides. We'll close that polling out. Come back into the slides here. Let me give you this next one. If I were thinking about, if that's how the behaviors are, here's how they emanate out into an organization. And so just go through a few of these, then I'm going to ask another question real quick and get you to maybe interact with the chat room here. Trust does not exist on the left-hand side. Trust exists on the right. In organizations, here's what we see. Do we have a fear of challenging organizational policy versus truth to power? A paycheck being thanks versus recognition. Little or no risk-taking versus initiative being rewarded. Approval versus people are accountable. If you're in the people business and you're going to be launching some type of HR mandate or something like this, these are the 2 questions you should be asking. Am I looking to mandate compliance, or am I trying to inspire excellence? A good example would be as if you went into the restroom and one of our local restaurants here, it's a mandatory requirement in the US that it says something like US law or state law requires all employees to wash their hands after leaving the restroom. And this restaurant said, our employees are so great, of course they wash their hands after leaving the restroom. And then right below in small print that you couldn't even read, it said US code, whatever it might be. I'm trying to inspire the excellence versus just mandate. A clear rank order exists versus leadership being more of a position. Leaders that start with I can be really caustic versus leaders that start with we did this instead of saying I did it. Bear Bryant is a very famous US football coach in history. And they were asking him one time, American football, and they were asking him one time, hey, how did you create such effective teams constantly? They said, well, with the leadership, if it went right, you did it. If it just went okay, we did it. And if it went wrong, no matter whose fault it was, if it went wrong, I did it. That's the only time a leader should use I. Send or receive CYA emails routinely. That's a saying for us. CYA is pretty much covering your backside. It's basically saying, I want to make sure that somebody was copied. So that if someone says, no, you didn't tell me about that, you can say, yeah, you were on the CC line, right? Versus being purposeful in communication. And the last 3 here. People are nervous when a leader is near versus people go about their business. For us, when we're doing consulting work with senior leader teams, I'm always very interested in seeing how do the people behave when the leader just walks in the room? Do they look for that leader to speak first? Do they defer to that leader? Does the leader speak first? Does the leader ask questions? I'm always looking at how people interact when the leader is around. People who do not say, I don't know, versus people who are vulnerable. This is probably this whole list. This is the one I like the most. And that is, if you're in an organization and someone can say the words, I don't know, that's a sign of a great culture and high trust. Because for most people, it means maybe I should have known. And versus not saying that, I'm willing to say it and getting some help. The last one here, we see this a lot in customer service and sales organizations. We avoid people who are struggling versus people who need help get help. So someone who's not hitting their sales targets, not hitting the numbers, the revenue, whatever it might be, instead of shunning them, it turns into, actually, we're going to get that person some help. Okay, if that's the list, then Well, let me ask you, what would you add to this list? So over to the chat room again, and perhaps there aren't any, but over to the chat room, can you tell me, and just put does or doesn't, and what would you add, if anything, to this list that we've built here? What's another one that you would add that's a key indicator that trust is not evident or that trust is evident? What would you add? As you're all thinking about that and perhaps think about what you're going to type into the chat area, I would offer trust exists when I see a high degree amount of personal sharing, that someone's willing to talk about it. Emily, great comment here about gossiping. Definitely erodes trust. And since you brought this up, we do a lot of inclusion work, and in trust, gossip is one of the eroders of fighting against inclusion. Gossip, literally defined, is that when we have unconstrained conversations about a third party who is not there and we can't verify that it's actually true. There's a great study by Harvard Business Review, and they found that almost 90% of conversations can qualify as gossip in an organization. And 15% of emails qualify as gossip. Again, it's a conversation about a third party who's not there, and what the commentary about that person is cannot be verified as true. Trust, when you give feedback to redirect to someone. Yes, feedback. Having the courage to do that directly to a person. This is a great one by Nora. Meetings after the meetings. Talk about a waste of time. There's an American humorist called Dave Barry. He said, if there is one item that will keep the human race from excelling, succeeding, and progressing, it is this word. It is meetings. And even worse than when we have to have meetings after the meetings. Rob mentioning demonstrate care and respect for others. Yes. Hesitant to offer feedback erodes trust. I'm literally not going to say something even though I think about it. And Rob, adult relationships, not parent to child, not being parental in that definitely erodes that trust. Great. Thank you for diving in on that one. And yeah, does not trust is the clock watcher. I'm going to check when you're clocking in, when you're leaving. If I'm that keyed in, then I actually don't know you as a person. As you mentioned that, I'm going to show you another slide, and this is a way that we've looked at evaluating both inside of a team and individually how we think about trust. So I've taken the same exact model. So care, being character and compassion, that's on the bottom, the x-axis. On the y-axis is the proficiency, my consistency, my competence. And so in this, low trust or almost no trust exists in that bottom left block there. Low care, low proficiency. Basically saying, I don't care about you as a person, I'm not going to do the right thing, I'm not good at my job, and I'm not good at doing my job very often. There's really challenging trust that exists there. If I move to the top left, now I have low care but high proficiency. Man, I can do my job. I don't know that I care about you as a person. I don't know if I'm always doing the right thing, but I can nail my job. I can do it, and I can do it over and over again. I'm going to shift over, bottom right. In the bottom right, I have high care but low proficiency. I care about you a lot. I can tell that you need that appendix removed. However, I'm not a doctor. Not funny. Fine, I'll work on it. High care, low proficiency. In other words, I care about you a lot, but I'm actually not good at it. I don't have the skill set to be able to do that. Trust doesn't exist there. At the top right, high care and high proficiency. I care about you as a person. I'm a good person. I do the right thing. I can do the job and I can do it consistently. This is where trust, and by the way, where high-performing teams live. If I were to give you an example of this, my brother, he's a FedEx pilot, but he likes cars, he likes maintaining cars. If I had a problem with my car, actually I'm not going to call my brother, because even though I know he cares about me very highly, so I'm on the bottom right block here, he cares about me a lot, he's actually not a mechanic, and all his mechanical knowledge is kind of TV deep. Whatever he can find on Netflix about cars, he watches, but he's not a mechanic. If I was to shift over and say I have a car problem and I need to take it to a dealership, I know the dealership knows how to do the job. I don't know that they care about me as a person, and I think what's going to happen is, for some dealerships, not all of them, perhaps my mindset might be, I think they're going to try and get the absolute most amount of money out of me for this service. So what I really need is my brother, who's a certified technician at BMW instead of a pilot at FedEx. So I'll record this and send it to him. Okay. So over to you all, I'm going to ask you to interact with this model. I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and before we launch the poll question, I'm going to orient you to this. I want you to answer the 4 questions I'm going to ask, but I want you to answer it just germane to you. So I'm going to ask you, the first question I ask you, and we'll launch this in a second, but I'm going to ask you how your leader views you, not about how you view your leader, how you think your leader views you. So as an example, in my case, my leader, I would say she thinks I'm highly proficient in my job, but I exhibit lower care because if I cared, I would update her more often on the things that we're doing. I would turn my invoices in on time. I would be better attentive to her and to her needs, and I'm not. So as a leader, I would offer that I'm much more in the low care, high proficiency block with her as my leader. I'm going to ask you a question about where you would rate yourself with your team. I'm going to ask you a question about where you'd rate yourself with friends and family, and then with customers. All right, so let's launch the poll question, the first one, if you don't mind. And I'm just going to ask you, when you consider this care proficiency matrix, where do you place yourself, where do you place yourself with your leader? First gut reaction. If you're like, no, I am high care, I'm high proficiency, then write that. Otherwise, mix me around on these a little bit. We'll see these votes start coming in. Now, I'd like that some of you are honest enough to say, actually, my leader looks at me as low care, low proficiency. That's fine. As we launch these, here's a breakout of the group and how this looked. High care, low proficiency being the highest one, but not by far. We do usually see in these areas where the high care, low proficiency and low care, high proficiency kind of split. This is interesting. The next question I'm going to ask you is, where do you place yourself with your team? And as we launch this, I will offer as an example. For my team, I would think, boy, Matt says he cares a lot, but I'm not sure. He's gone a lot and traveling a lot. So I would place myself and my team in high care, but low proficiency. So as you vote on all of those. This is where you would place yourself with your team. And as let me show you what these results came up. And you can see there's a certain portion of you that are saying, no, I'm high in both, but in the other ones, at least half of us, more than half of us say, now there's some work to be done there. Okay, before I launch this one, I want to orient to this one. This one I'm going to ask you about friends and family. So as an example, I have two young boys, 8 and 10, and I think they would probably say, my job as the dad is to, fix things, carry things, throw kids around, that kind of stuff, play with them, wrestle with them. But I'm not home a lot because of my travel. So I would say that probably high care when dad's around, but low proficiency because I can't do all the things like taking them to soccer and picking them up from school all the time. So let's launch that. Let's go ahead and launch that voting. And this is where would you place yourself with family or friends? Where would you put yourself? Okay, as we launch this and we show this back to, this is interesting. So this one shows a lot more on the high care, high proficiency, which is great, and a lot on high care, lower proficiency. And some of the reasons that drives the discrepancies we'll get into. This is the last question I ask you. So we'll launch this next question, and that is, how do I look at this and how do I place myself with clients or customers? And I will tell you the truth, like this is just complete transparency with you. I would place myself, this is the one group in my life that gets high care, high proficiency. I'll drop anything, I'll run to say what it needs to be, I'll talk endless hours with our clients because I really love the work. It's not that I keep my family lower or my leader lower, my team, but I realize that it's the future of our growth. It's a passion for me. And so I defer to this. And as we share the voting results in this, this group that we're working with today shows the exact same, that this was a group that rated the highest amount of trust. So I asked you your leader, your team, your family, and your clients. And you all said the highest amount of trust that I have on this model is clients. And I would offer the exact same. Exact same. So as we close these poll questions up on this one, and the reason I bring this quote up is it comes right back to some of the work that we just asked you to do. And that is Inc. magazine asked a whole bunch of folks, some of the readers or viewers, those types of things. They said, hey, what's the #1 leadership maxim? That if you could just have one of them that described leadership, what would it be? And overwhelmingly, this was the quote that people sent in. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. This goes right back in to our trust model. That very, very foundation of trust is, do I actually care about you as another human being, as a person? It's what drives inspiration. It also drives the bedrock of trust. And oftentimes we focus more on just what I can see, the competence, the consistency, and not really working into the character, talking about values, or the compassion, talking about how much I care about you, or that I'm willing to listen to you. And so just from a care perspective, how important that one is. All right, so right back into that. Okay, so I'm going to answer two questions. One, because I get this question a lot. They'll say, well, what about when trust is broken? They'll say, well, what are the steps then we take? Or what if I have a new team? And I'll get all these contextual questions on building trust. And I know that there are other consultancies that have built products around, well, if trust is broken, then pull these cards out. And if trust needs to be re-nurtured, then pull these cards out. If it's a new team, pull these cards out. And I would tell you the beauty of this is I just gave you 4 cards. It's compassion, it's consistency, it's competence, and it's character. And you go right back to those behaviors. And you start with transparency. Here's why I think trust was broken. Here's what I own in this. Here's what I think the situation is. Here's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to work really hard on this. And so when it comes to what about when trust is broken, it's the exact same behaviors I'm working right back into. All right, and I promised I would end with this one. I get this a lot, and the question would be, well, you know, building trust, it just takes a lot of time. That's what it does. And actually, time doesn't build trust. Behaviors do. Behaviors I showed you. And so to articulate this example, if we're all in the same room, and I know we're just virtual, we're digital right now, but if we're all in the same room and we're doing some type of work together and all of a sudden the lights go out, we can't see anything. There's smoke, someone says there's a fire, I don't know, someone else says there's no way out, and all of a sudden a voice we hear in the darkness. We can't see this person, can't identify whether it's male, female, who they are, don't know them. All we hear is, listen to me, this place is on fire, it's going to collapse, follow me, I know the way out. We follow that person, we grab hands, we follow that person, she leads us outside, we look behind, the building collapses, it's been just seconds, a Hollywood ending. It's been seconds, the building collapses, we're all safe. We've known this person for approximately 3 seconds. And yet, and I ask the question, do we trust that person now? And you say, yeah, I do. How much time did it take? The problem with obviously saying time, it takes time to build trust is, it's almost like a proxy to say, I'm just going to wait around. And in my workplace, I'm going to wait around until there's a financial issue, a health scare, a career inflection point that's really challenging. Then I can swoop in and show you the behaviors that I care about you. And yet the behaviors I showed you, you can do each and every single day. So when someone says it takes time to build trust, it certainly does if you're not doing those behaviors, because you have to wait for an emergency. Yeah, the picture is of a pocket watch my parents gave me when I was commissioned in the U.S. military, and so I thought it was apropos for the behaviors that build the trust. My mom had taken this out and engraved it with my commissioning date and presented it to me at a dinner we had at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. And so I think back about it isn't the time that was required of my mom, but it was her behaviors that she did that consistently make me trust her. All right, why and how are we bringing this back to team effectiveness? They give you this is open source material, Project Aristotle. So this was Google's project on trying to figure out what makes effective teams. And Google gets some of the best and the brightest folks around the world. They were trying to figure out, well, why do we have teams that are highly effective? They get things done. They have low turnover rates. They have high engagement, high safety scores. They meet their commitments in terms of finance, time, and quality. Why do we have teams that do that and other teams that can't? So they ran a whole bunch of research, threw a whole bunch of money at this, and came up with these 5 factors. Number 1 factor of a team being effective is team members feel safe enough to be vulnerable, which means ask for and receive help. Open up and say, I don't know. The reason I'm relating it back to this is trust actually doesn't exist unless there's vulnerability. Unless I'm vulnerable, that's when I need trust. If there's no interaction, there's no vulnerability there, do I trust the person? It's immaterial. If I'm working with you, of course I need to trust you. And so I'm bringing this back to an actual effectiveness and business performance part to say the number 1 determining factor of effective teams are psychological safety. All of those behaviors that I mentioned allow us to trust one another. Dependability is right in that competence model that I listed for you. Can you get the things done and meet the standards? Can you do your job? Structure and clarity is around, do I know where the roles, do I know where our swim lanes are from a job perspective? Meaning, I know there's a lot of work being done on purpose and how important that is, it is important. It is number 4 on the list of the top 5 things. It needs to be personally important to team members. The way we find that out from the trust aspect is compassion. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to share my values with you. The last one here is impact, that the work that's being done matters and creates change. One of the ways I know that, right back to the trust work, is as a leader or as a coworker, I'm going to recognize you for your contributions. This is why and where trust leads right back into high performance. Okay, my friends, you've been with me for about 46 minutes, and I so appreciate diving in, answering the poll questions, chatting it up. Here's our book. You can download Everybody Matters. If you just want to watch the documentary, you can get both of them on our website, ccoleadership.com. If you want to reach out to me directly, this is my email. I'm happy to take questions for the remaining 13, 14 minutes that we have. Just put them if you don't mind. Can you put them into the question and answer? If you want to put them in the chat room, I'm watching both. But I'm happy to take any of the question and answer. And as we do that, I'm going to launch the very last, the last poll. And someone mentioned this. Someone mentioned about asking for feedback. And so it's really important to us here at the Chapman & Co. Leadership Institute that we get feedback from you. And so Maria's going to launch the last polling question, and I'll answer any questions while we're doing this. But please, please, just take a couple minutes and answer about 3 really short, quick questions on how this webinar was for you. And so as we'll leave that polling question up, and we won't share it, it's all anonymous, but please give us some feedback on how you thought the webinar went. We really appreciate it. There's 26 of you on. We would appreciate 26 votes. You liked it, you didn't like it, I didn't learn anything new, I did. Here's why I would improve it. So appreciating that feedback. And happy to answer any questions or take any chat room requests or any of that kind of stuff. You want me to unmute you and you want to say something, just go ahead and let us know, and Maria can unmute you as well. So I'll stand by here as we think about some questions. At this moment, I'm realizing that if no one asks questions and I'm still in video, then I realize I don't even know where to look. Like, do I look at the camera? Do I look at you? It's getting awkward. You feel awkward. You're looking away. I feel awkward. This is supposed to be on trust. I don't even trust you. You won't ask me a question. It's gone downhill quick, folks. I'm going to put this in the polling questions. How much do you trust people who run webinars? It's fine. Okay, Rob, thank you for saving us. Rob, what changes have you seen with some of your clients that have built trust in their organizations? Rob, I asked for easy questions, not the hard ones. So Rob's question is a great one. What changes have you seen with some of your clients that have built trust in their organizations? Where we see this come out in is, honestly, we see it, if you want to know like the macro, how does this impact an organization? We see it in lower turnover, and we see it in higher customer engagement scores. The reason we do is twofold. One is, if I know my leader has my back, I'm going to be more authentic with the customers. I know it's someone cares about me, and so then therefore I care about them and I care about the performance of the group. And also with the lower turnover, because now my leader is answering some of the questions, I feel trusted enough that I'm going to speak up. I'm going to share my idea. I'm going to share my concerns. The organization gets better. My lower turnover also leads to better job competency. And then I have better customer relations, especially when we work with organizations that have a high turnover rate. We see the material difference happening faster. But great question. I could also get into anecdotal stories like, oh, we're showing more alignment of resources to where they're needed. And so I might see people shifting roles. The conversations are more honest. And so while they might be more difficult on the front end, the end result is the organization is structured a lot better to handle the weather and storms that might occur in the economic framework. But great question, Rob. Where do you start with building trust for large-scale hourly workforce? Carrie, can you type in some more in the chat room, a little bit more? Where do you start with building trust for large-scale hourly workforce? I need to know a little more before I jump into that, answering that question. So can you just, any amount more you can would be really appreciated there, Carrie. And as Carrie, I'm waiting on Carrie to type in some more information on that one. I'm going to answer Jean's question. If someone grew up in a very unsafe environment, it's taken more time, does their background matter? And that is a fantastic question, and I'm hesitant to answer from a pure on average view because it's so dependent on individuality. So if the unsafe environment that I grew up in was, let's say, very gender specific, then perhaps that plays more of a role. I will offer that the behaviors we talked about, and I'm not trying to dive away from the question, it's just that the question you're asking has so many nuances, is where trust is built is in the individual relationships. And so what I'm trying to do is give you the behaviors that has right in the individual relationships. And if I'm a better listener, I might know more so about what your background is and then be able to tailor my behavior much more towards that part of it. I will tell you this. We run a game, and I won't tell you the whole series of the game, but this is germane to your question, so appreciate my team reminding me on this. The game we play is basically a rendition of the prisoner's dilemma. And for those of you that don't know, the prisoner's dilemma is basically we pit two sides against each other. They both have the opportunity to harm one another. If they can both trust one another and make the same decisions, and they both do well. If one violates the trust, one does poorly and the other one does fine. If they both violate trust, they both do poorly. So I put all the incentives around this. We play this game, right? We call this game, we do it in leadership training. The place where we will see the most distrust right away are two areas. One is in high security environments. So we have a branch of our Leadership Institute in South Africa. I'll see a lot of that, and because of South Africa, because of the environment that they're in, a lot of the electric fences and the security and all the issues they have, I see more people being competitive and not trusting. But the place that I see it the most, where people do not trust outside the gate, and this is, oh gosh, I'm so glad my team brought this up, because Gene, you're mentioning if someone grew up in a very unsafe environment, I'm going to tell you that the place where people compete and don't trust right away is in college environments for the US. In the US, you're getting into college. I don't need to be the best. I just need to be better than the other person. It's always on a curve. And so I'm competing constantly. And now I compete to get into college. Now I compete to get into med school. And then I compete to be number one in med school because now I'm competing for the internships and the residencies. And so sometimes, this is why it's so critical of the behaviors we listed, man, as a brand new young professional, as a leader, gosh, if I got to show them a lot of trust and tell them it's not about competition anymore. Great question, thank you. Carrie, where do you start building trust for large-scale hourly workforce? And I asked you for more information. You gave me less desirable work with higher turnover. Great commentary here. That's a great question. One of the groups that we work with is a large retailer, and some of their entry-level jobs have high turnover in excess of 150% at times. We have clients here, even in St. Louis, that exhibit it's basically entry-level jobs with higher turnover. I'll be honest with you, I know this is going to sound a little rough. Most of the time, these are people that have never actually been listened to, ever. And so when you have an opportunity to be a leader and to listen to them, it makes it so much different to where they actually feel like, well, this is an organization that actually cares for me. The other part is to be very transparent about it. Hey, I know this is probably your personal choice to be here. This is an entry-level job. I also know you don't want to be in this job for the rest of your life. And so I'm going to help you. That no matter how long you're here with us in this organization, we're like a talent factory. We're going to build you. We're going to build you better, and you're going to go on to better things. For the time you're here, though, I'm going to work with you. I would offer an organization that does that really well, and they have a huge hourly workforce that's less desirable and high turnover, and that is Starbucks. And Starbucks does a really nice job of saying, I know you don't want to be a barista for life. I know this is just a small amount of time that you're here, and we're going to invest in you. Any other questions you have? I know we have about 5 minutes left here, so for any of you that want to stay on the line, we'll be happy to take any of the questions, any more questions, but certainly appreciate the feedback you provided. For the 15 of you that voted, thank you so much for the feedback. I really do appreciate it. We run this webinar again. My colleague Jamie Dix will be running this one on Friday at same time, 1 p.m. Central Time this Friday. So if you have friends in your organization that you would like to expose them to this type of trust model and the kind of work and the questions that we did, please share the link. And if you need it, just email me and we'll send that over. Also, if you'd like the slides, we'll put them in PDF. We'll send all those out to everyone that registered for this. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the video. I'll go on mute, but I will hang out if you put in any of the questions. Thank you again, wherever you are in the world. Rob, thanks for hanging out with us in the UK, and good luck to Lewis Hamilton this weekend to win the Drivers' Championship for Formula One. Thanks, everyone.